So, a developer for Royale High has come out and basically made a post saying that they are addressing the misinformation that allegedly the Royale High Valks account is actively trying to silence players for sharing their criticism about the recent updates in the game itself. Now, for those of you guys that don't know, recently the Royale High Valks account came out with an official statement, which I'll put on the screen, which basically talked about how they're going to be moderating the community going forward, and they discussed certain aspects such as vulgarity and just people being really toxic, and how that may result in a ban from both the Twitter but also the Roblox game itself. Now, one of my criticisms for this announcement was I do think it's valid for them to block people who are being inherently hateful because it's not their job to be anybody's punching bag. But my biggest concern was how are they identifying toxicity and what does toxicity actually mean to them? Because I find that oftentimes people characterize commentary as being inherently toxic if it's not meant to be interpreted that way, but people may interpret things differently because of the subjectivity of what is being discussed, right? And I don't necessarily feel like there's an objective way to look at this stuff unless you have maybe a book with the code of conduct or just the way that you're going to be moderating in a consistent, unbiased way of moderating comments and stuff that comes into the Royale High page. Because unfortunately, I do see sometimes that it feels to me, as an outsider, that there may be certain biases towards certain people, specifically people that maybe disagree with Royale High all the time and stuff like that. And if they're consistently commenting negative criticism, maybe that would be interpreted as such toxicity, which would then result in a ban. I'm not 100% sure. But I do feel like there has been certain creators, specifically those who are more critical of the game, that are oftentimes accusing Royale High of banning them or stuff like that. And so I do feel like having just a non-biased, or I guess not unbiased way to word that, but an unbiased way to moderate things and to, objectively ban bad actors would be the best way to go about this moving forward, because players seem to be very almost afraid of what is happening, because Royale High historically does have a track record of silencing people. And that's not something that's unknown. That's something that's been pretty widely known, specifically with certain creators in Royale High not liking what they're saying. And so they went ahead and threatened taking badges away and stuff like that. There was lots of stuff that regarded that sort of thing. And I do want to clarify that had to do with the previous community manager. And so at the end of the day, this community manager is not associated with that stuff. The previous community manager, who has a variety of allegations against them regarding their other behavior, that's the person that we're talking about in that situation. So although it was a different community manager, and this is a different one to my understanding now, like it's a new one, I do understand that players are still kind of sensitive to this kind of behavior because they don't want it to revert to how it was before, because that was a really toxic and unhealthy environment for everybody involved, right? Now, with that in mind, there has been a ton of posts on Twitter, people saying that they were unfairly banned from Royale High, alleging that Royale High is trying to silence them, that they feel like they're not being heard. And so this developer by the name of Neapolitine, I think is how I say that, came out and actually made a statement regarding the misinformation, and I want to read it to you guys as well as just giving my opinions on it. So they start out by saying, "Hello friends, it's me again. I need to come here really quick and give you guys an important update. I'm clarifying all the misinformation spread regarding the bans from the Royale High Valks Twitter. A lot of people are saying that you get banned from the account just for disagreeing with them regarding updates, sharing your personal opinion, or just not liking items from the game. That is absolutely false. I got upset on your behalf because we entered an era of Royale High where we are willing to listen, we are coming to the other players and inquiring, gauging interest in things you'd like to see, and taking all that feedback and studying what we can do as long as it's within possibility. It would take us so many steps back from listening to the players and having the communication if those ban claims were true." Which, side note, I do agree that Royale High has entered into an era where I feel like they're listening to community a lot more, and I appreciate that. I think that's a really important thing that they have fixed. Somewhat, right? But I do sometimes feel like, personally, in my opinion, that the listening to the community is kind of selective. There are certain situations where they are willing to listen to community, whereas others are kind of like not open for discussion, and that's just kind of how it is. Specifically with the 2x multiplier game passes. When the community said that they wanted more toggles with the 2x Halo, Royale High was quick to oblige, and they made some more toggles, which I think was great. That is a very good example of listening to the community. However, when it came to players saying that the diamond compensation wasn't actually fair, which I'm going to get into another video, Royale High basically just kind of said, yeah, that's how it is. Yeah, we're still doing an update, that's what you get. And it made a lot of players kind of feel like, oh, like, so you'll listen to me about the Halo, but you're not listening about the compensation. And I understand that, obviously, you can't always just do what everybody wants. And it's not about not doing what they wanted. It's about not understanding why players are upset and not addressing why the compensation diamonds are not sufficient, right? Instead, they're just saying, oh, well, that's what you guys get, but completely rejecting the understanding or the fact that the diamonds that players got based on the buff is not actually worth the amount that they're supposed to be worth. So there is a lot of, backlash regarding that, and players feel like they aren't being listened to. So although I do feel like they've gotten way better at listening to players, I do feel like there are still sections where they are kind of biased with when they will be open to criticism versus when they aren't. And I can understand it's not always super easy to take criticism, and there will be times where they just can't apply what the community wants. But regardless, I feel like it takes nothing to listen and to be understanding. You don't always have to do exactly what players are asking you to do, but just showing that you care and that you understand, I think, is the most important part here. And it feels like sometimes they are just not open to that, in my opinion. Now, the developer goes on to say, so I went ahead and had a sit down with the social media team and asked about the bans, the why, the how, the when, and the who. I even grabbed to the post and inquired about users that explained only disagreed. Guys, they have the screenshots, the DMs, the ads, etc. If you share your opinion/disagreement respectfully, not with vulgarity, toxicity, and disrespect, you won't be banned at all. Which, side note, the disrespect comment here. I agree, if you are using vulgarity or being violent, etc., yes, you should be banned. But when it comes to disrespect, what are we identifying as disrespect? Like, if players aren't sugarcoating their feedback, does that mean they're being disrespectful? Again, we need an unbiased way to identify how stuff is toxic or how it's disrespectful. Because a lot of players have argued, well, you haven't earned my respect. And although I believe that basic human decency is important here, I think the difference between respect and just being, polite are two different things here. And you could be respectful while not fully respecting somebody because of the way that they have notoriously or historically treated you, right? And so I don't necessarily feel like Royale High is owed necessarily a respect from any particular player, especially because of the track record of the kind of behaviors that have been emulated by the game. But at the same time, I do feel like basic human decency and politeness are obviously important here. But I do feel like the usage of the word respect, you're not owed respect from players that you technically haven't necessarily earned it from. You know what I mean? Like, players aren't required to respect you to share their opinions, but they are required to be, basic human decency, like apply basic human decency to their commentary, so they aren't being inherently hateful, right? So I do feel like the usage of respect here is kind of interesting, but they go on to say, those circumstances will get you banned just like in any other game/company/space, which that is correct. The reason Royale High Valks posted about harassment and the consequences, which would be a ban, was because some of you took it too far and sent violent messages using vulgarity, incite a toxic environment, send death threats, go into servers that the devs are inactive in, including my at them to bring things up, and even to report me to ICE again. And I did hear there's allegedly players who are reporting this developer to ICE. Based on what I've seen, it sounds like they're adding ICE's social media accounts. I'm not sure if they're actually physically going into a police station or physically going to a tip line and reporting this developer, or if it's social media adding. But regardless, it's a very serious situation because a lot of people have been incredibly negatively impacted by the actions of ICE, and it has turned into a deadly kind of situation. And I feel like potentially putting someone in a situation where they could be immediately in danger over a pixelated game, just not appropriate. You're allowed to disagree with the game, but bringing in real world corruption and trying to put that corruption onto an innocent developer, crazy. That is absolutely insane. They want to say, if you haven't done any of the above, you'd be fine. Let's not spread the false narrative that speaking on what you don't like about the game will get you banned, because I can assure you it won't. Which, side note, the people that always say the most abhorrent stuff are the people who are like, I did nothing. I'm just a real baby. I didn't do anything. I'm innocent. And I can't stand it when people do that. It will always be the most nastiest person you've ever met in your entire life. It's like the mean girl in middle school that would post the funny, quirky TikToks and then would push you down the stairs afterwards. Those people are always acting like they're such a victim when they just aren't. And I don't know if it's mental illness or just denial, no idea. But some people on Twitter just need to get a grip, and they have no concept of self-awareness. And I definitely do see people saying, I'm just a real baby, I didn't do anything wrong, and they've done the most abhorrent stuff known to man. So I definitely don't deny that there are certainly people who are lying about just being banned for no reason, right? Now, they go on to say, from day one, me, a Royale High dev, is saying I'm willing to listen. Even the rude comments were heard because I know how important your voices are. Now, to those of you who might have felt like you got banned and did nothing wrong, you're welcome to appeal the account to receive an unbanning. Let's not continue to spread that it's not liking something that gets you banned. The devs don't listen, that Royale High never listens, because the social media team and I have been working way too hard to show you that is false, and we are here to listen. Listening doesn't mean implementing your suggestions as soon as you suggest them. Listening means taking the feedback and suggestions to the drawing board and seeing how/if it could be implemented/alternatives, and make a roadmap with plans. And this is what I have been constantly doing in the Royale High Valks. There's a lot on the agenda, including things requested before, like Barbie mentioned in her stream, a full dress up rework, and lots of other fun things. Which, that is amazing, that's awesome. But how do you expect players to know that? Full stop. How do you expect players to know that if you are not communicating that clearly? And I understand they've gotten under fire in the previous months for, I guess, giving sneak peeks too early and stuff like that. But I don't necessarily feel like there's any issue with just being transparent with what you're working on and not attaching a date to it. You know what I mean? You don't have to attach a date to something. At the same time, I do feel like attaching a date does kind of lead to more accountability when it comes to how you're going to be managing your time and stuff like that. But at the same time, I understand it's a lot of pressure. So you don't even need to give us a date. But if you could just say, hey, we are working on the dress up rework, or just release a public roadmap of this is what is coming this year, or this is what is planned in the works for this year. Like the communication here, again, I feel like it's very kind of selective with when you're going to communicate versus when you're not. And I feel like getting kind of frustrated with players for not understanding, quote unquote, all the effort, which I respect. That's great. You're putting in so much effort. Congratulations. Like, thank you. But at the same time, me as an outside player who's very invested in the community, I didn't know about half the stuff because I'm not chronically online. I'm not checking into every single one of Barbie's streams or every single little mini reply that goes up at the Royale High Valks because I just don't have time for that. And neither does anybody else. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of like, that's amazing that you're working on this. Why can you not communicate that? Why is that not clearly out there for everybody, especially people who don't have social media? The average player who supports your game should not have to go to an external platform that is known for not being super safe to go and get information about a game that is supposed to be on a allegedly safe platform, which it's not. But you know what I mean? Like, I feel like this information could be shared directly through Roblox and maybe a roadmap that you can open up in the game, maybe on the developer forum, something like that. But I understand you're working hard, and I feel like the criticism you're getting is not warranted, but at the same time, that criticism is coming from a space of players who do not understand because the information that they need to form an opinion is not being provided to them transparently. And so if we can kind of bridge the gap here and make it so that players can understand what is going on and what is in the works, then they will definitely be more empathetic to understanding when things take longer because they understand, oh, they're working on all these things, and I feel like that would just help the community so much. Of course, there will always be bad apples that are never happy. That's a given, right? But I feel like a lot of the anger from genuine Royale High fans is coming from a space I feel like they aren't respected because they're left out of important conversations. They are not, put in the loop, especially when they dedicate hours of their time every single day to your game. And I feel like as a game company, you owe it to your follower base to be transparent. Yes, you cannot always share every single tiny aspect of your development process, but at the end of the day, you can't get mad at players for being angry because they are missing context when you won't provide that context to them transparently and openly. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a situation that I feel like there's just a lack of communication, and that is what has led to this whole thing snowballing when it didn't need to in the first place. Now, they go on to say, where is it? And lots of other fun things. We have a full team working every day, but things take time and quantity doesn't equal things come faster. I can assure you we have a whole team, not everyone is public. I just want to clear the air because I think it's unfair to deceive others by lying, taking screenshots out of context, and misguiding others. Please guys, when someone spreads something, you can always come and ask me. I won't sit still and will always jump up to try and help and get answers. I freaking love you guys a lot and I'm always here for you. Vilifying the Royale High Valks account was a tad unfair, as there's always more that meets the eye with most of these claims, so be careful about deceiving claims. Which I agree, there's a lot of people sharing deceiving claims. At the same time, though, you cannot be mad at people for not understanding the full picture when the full picture is not shared with them. And I'm not trying to, be hateful or toxic, but I'm just being honest. Like, as somebody who spends a lot of their day, looking through Twitter and finding stuff for video ideas because this is part of my job, that's what I do, that's part of the way that I make money, and it's like, I have like a genuine incentive to be looking into this stuff, unlike the average player who's maybe just scrolling aimlessly, but I am actively looking for answers or actively looking for specific things, keyword searching, people are sending me leads and stuff like that, and I still can't find some of this information. So the fact that I can't always find it, how do you expect the average player who's maybe like 14, 13 years old to find it either? You know what I mean? So regardless, I understand there's a lot of sides to this. And I don't think that stuff is necessarily always being fairly handled by the community. I feel like sometimes people can be really aggressive and they don't understand the way their words. And there are certainly two sides to the story. And I really appreciate the developers taking the time out of their day to try and clarify the error. And I just hope that, players can be respectful in their comments back to the developer and, be kind with the way that they're wording things. But at the same time, I also hope the Royale High team can understand that players don't want to hate your game. Sure, there's some bad apples that maybe just want to tear you down, but the majority of players don't want to hate your game. They don't want to be unhappy with the game, but they want to feel heard. They want to feel understood, and they want to be in the loop. And if you cannot provide them with transparent roadmaps of what is coming, you can't be upset when they get angry because no updates are coming out. You know what I mean? So Regardless, I do think this whole thing stems from just a lack of transparent communication. I wonder if there can be something like in-game polls or like an in-game roadmap that could be added. I understand that's work, but in the day, I feel like the work of that would be worth it for maintaining a more healthy environment. And again, you're never going to please anybody. That's a given. Everybody knows that. But when you're, to me, it feels like you're overlooking the most loyal part of your fan base, I think it's going to really come as a detriment to the game. And I hope that by potentially implementing some of the things that I've suggested, or other people too, if you look on Twitter, that players may feel more heard, and that will help foster a more positive environment for absolutely everybody involved. And then that way you can earn the respect from your player base, because again, like most people on Twitter have said, respect is earned, not given. And although you should always, address people with politeness and basic human decency, at the same time, you don't have to respect somebody who hasn't necessarily earned your respect or has previously betrayed it in the past. So regardless, let me know your guys' thoughts on this. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Obviously, be respectful with how you're wording it, but I want to know if you guys kind of share the same sentiment, or maybe you have a different perception. Let me know down below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.